What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Retro Movie Podcast, the podcast where everything is connected. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson, and joining me is my co-host, friend, and the person most likely to spit his dinner into a cup, seal it away to ferment it, and then drink it a few years later, Alex Perkins. Perk, how you doing tonight?
I'm well, thanks. Booze is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's my counter here.
Yep, you got to invest.
You got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Plan for the future.
It's
never know when we're going to get locked down again.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This is the show where every week Perk and I review a movie connected to the last one we watched. If you like our show, you can follow us on YouTube and TikTok, and we post on podcast services pretty much every Friday. If you like our show, tell your friends about it and come watch the movies with us. Last week, we watched the Studio Ghibli movie Howl's Moving Castle, and we're like, all right, let's move away into one of my favorite anime movies and one of the highest grossing anime films of all time, Your Name, our connection being Ryunosuke Kamiki, who played Markle in the sub of Howl's Moving Castle, and he plays Taki in Your Name. So, yeah, Perk, why don't you intro it for us?
Yeah, all right. So, Your Name is a 2016 joint directed by Makoto Shinkai, starring the aforementioned Ryunosuke Kamiki and Mone Kamishiraishi.
Nice, you got it.
Sorry, I tried my best. And it follows two teenagers who, on a random twist of fate, end up switching bodies every other day, and then one day the switches stop happening, and Taki the boy tries to go figure out what happened to Mitsuha and find her in her village, and antics ensue. Yeah, couple fun facts about this one. The red braided cord that Mitsuha wears in her hair represents the invisible red string of fate that connects someone to their fated person, according to Japanese tradition. And then this movie was the first non-Ghibli or Miyazaki movie to gross over 1 billion yen.
Hell yeah. Love to see it. Perk, I've seen this movie before, so I will go to you first. What did you think of Your Name?
I don't know if you want to go to me first.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm pretty lukewarm on it.
Okay.
Honestly. It is the standout for me is the animation. It's beyond gorgeous. It's just really pleasant to look at, and I think there's a lot that works really well. I was just a little put off by the story feeling like kind of just some recycled bits from other stuff I've seen many times.
Interesting. Okay.
Maybe not many, but they feel like it's a combination of a couple well-beaten tropes, in my opinion. And I think it works, and I think that it revolving around a really strong central relationship helps it. But overall, I think it's just a little underwhelming. I think the first half of the movie, I was borderlining on board. The second half certainly pulls it back, but it used something I've seen before to do so. So I don't know. It absolutely has merit. It's really well made. It's really well vocally acted, really well animated. It left a little to be desired for me.
Okay, interesting. For me, I really love this movie. I was worried on the rewatch, knowing the twist, that would kind of take away from it and not be as fun to watch. But I think there's a lot of little hints and like clues throughout the movie that if you know what's going on, you can see them ahead of time, which is really fun.
Yeah, I have to imagine there's a lot of stuff on rewatch that you'd catch. Like, he wears that red bracelet the whole movie.
Yep.
And she puts in her hair the whole movie.
Yep.
So I think with an attentive eye on a rewatch, I think stuff like that would stand out and be really cool.
Even the first scene is in the present day, and they're talking about things that don't make sense until you've seen the whole movie, because it kind of shows like the last scene in the beginning and stuff with the comet and stuff. But yeah, I think this movie is beautiful. I agree on the first, when I first watched it, like the first half, I'm like, this is solid, like this is good. But I'm surprised why it's so highly rated. And then the twist happens, and it's like, oh, she's 3 years in the past and she's dead. I was like, oh shit, like this is awesome. And then I really love the climax, and it's just, I don't know. I think it actually hit me harder on the second viewing because I knew what was going on. I didn't have to think as hard to like understand. And I just really loved all the relationships in this movie between them, of course, and then also like the grandma. I think is really fun to watch with her interactions, and the sister is really great. Yeah, I love this movie. And the other thing that I caught in this rewatch was just the soundtrack is fucking awesome. Like I absolutely adore the soundtrack by Radwimps. Like all of the vocal songs I think are awesome. Like we get like an actual like intro song with the opening credits, which is awesome. We get like an interlude.
That felt very anime, which I can appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, we need it in more movies, man. I really love that. And then we get like a song in the middle when they're kind of going back and forth a lot. And then some songs at the end. Like the final song that's playing when they're looking for each other at the end, I think is really beautiful. So yeah, I love this movie. And I agree. I think the animation itself is gorgeous. Like the landscapes we get of not only in the countryside, but also in Tokyo are like equally gorgeous. And they did a great job with all that.
Yeah, one of the things about the animation that struck me above all as well is there are a lot of just really cool scenes where the camera swivels around a character and they play with the depth of the image. And I think it looks stunning. It looks flawless. There were a couple times where I think some of the... Because I don't know how any of this stuff works, but it's like a lot of the characters and everything felt hand-drawn because of the way they're animated on 2s and 3s. And then occasionally there would be something like a pop can falling in a machine that was too smooth, where it's like this seems like it was put in by a computer. And I had the same kind of struggle with Demon Slayer Mugen Train, where when it gets all wormy, I almost feel like if you just chopped up the animation, it would fit in a little better. But that's not an actual nitpick.
Right.
Sorry, I got off track.
I think what you're noticing is when they use a 3D model or not. And yeah, it definitely is a little bit noticeable. And yeah, I feel like there's a common talk about there's like movie quality animation and then like normal animation for like a show. And you can tell it's like if you're watching a movie, it's like, okay, this is a higher level. But I feel like sometimes it takes away just a little bit. If they, like you said, with that pop can, I know exactly what you're talking about because that scene really sticks out. And it's just like, it's almost too good. And I need you to like pull back a little bit.
Right. Yeah, it feels like there aren't rough edges. It's almost a little too clean. But I got off track. I was commenting on how the landscapes when the camera is turning are so cool. And the way they play with depth is just really imaginative and not something I've really seen before.
Yeah, and light as well, like some lens flare and just kind of reflections. I think are really well done. I think as animations progress, that's one thing we've gotten better. It's just kind of like water droplets and just kind of reflections of light and even through water, like those kind of things. I think have gotten much better since hand drawn stuff. I'm sure this is all hand drawn, but like digitally drawn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For most of this.
And then I love it when. So some of my favorite episodes of like BoJack Horseman per se is the stupid piece of shit episode where they really kind of play with the animation style and kind of go for something more like it's pretentious to say avant-garde, and I don't even know what that means. But something more out there, something more unique. I love when we get to see stuff like that, and I thought in particular the scene where he goes to their shrine and he drinks her spit backwash. When he like fades away into like almost like a fever dream, I love that scene. Yeah, it's awesome. So gorgeous. The way that like the thread kind of goes through and all the beautiful colors, and it like there's an effervescence to that scene that's just it's so fun to watch. It's a really involving scene.
Yeah, that scene is gorgeous. Another thing that I caught on this rewatch that I didn't fully, and I still don't get, you're more the themes guy than me or the symbolism guy, but the grandma talking about how, for the traditions they lost all the records of why they do them. So they just do the form to keep it passed on to the future. And I think it's just a really interesting idea of like these, the traditions they do. And it's like, they don't even know why they're doing them, but it's just, we got to pass on the history. We got to move it on. I'm sure there's some way that ties in to the main themes, but I can't figure it out. But I thought that was an interesting concept.
It's not something I've thought critically about, but I also thought that was a very interesting touch. And yeah, I also like that. I like that it's like, well, why do we do this? We just do.
Mm-hmm.
It's to preserve tradition, even though we don't really know why.
Yeah, but if we stop doing it, it will be gone like forever because there's no like written record of it.
Right.
Yeah, but speaking about the structure of this movie too, I really like how we start with Mizuha for like a large chunk of the movie before we even see Taki. Granted, she's slipping in his body, but like it's like kind of all her for the first bit. And I assume you knew the premise a little bit before going in, maybe not. But it's like, okay, what's going on? Like, what exactly is happening? And then we finally get them both figuring it out. But we're kind of with her the first half and then with Taki the second half. And that was a good way to balance the film.
I agree with you. I think that structure works super well. And they do something similar after the midpoint, where after the midpoint, we cut to Taki because he's no longer switching. We pick up with his story. And then we follow him on his journey, and then he drinks the spit wine, and then we follow Mitsuha again when she wakes up as Taki, and she kind of takes over after they switch back at twilight. I think you're right. I think the way that, because it could very easily get confusing if you're constantly swapping, and they do that a little bit at the start, but that's kind of to just establish what's going on.
Yeah.
And then when they settle into the story, you're right. It's more like we're going to follow Taki for a bit and then Mitsuha for a bit. And I think that, yeah, you're right. That structure, while it's sneaky because you don't really notice it unless you're looking for it, but it makes the movie flow really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciated that. And yeah, the scene we do get, that set to music of them going back and forth really fast. I think it's just really fun because it's them like fucking with each other or like writing on their faces and all that stuff. Just like the mechanics of the body swapping, I think is really, because we all seen Freaky Friday, right? Great movie. But like, I like how they have to leave notes for each other on their phones. Like, how would you actually do this if this happened to you? I think I just really liked how they had to manage it, and you got to go to work and you got to go to school and do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it opens up some slight plot holes, which I'm not nitpicking. This doesn't really bug me, but never in this whole span of switching bodies did you like look at a sign that said the name of the town.
Well, no, they're remembering stuff, and that's something too that my first watch is like, I feel like they would have remembered stuff better, or like, well, when I first watched it, I'm like, why don't they just call each other? And then we understand why later.
Yeah, well, yes. But that was my thought too. But
yeah,
not being able to find the town, given they don't really waste a lot of time with that, and there's a nice scene where they do find the town.
Yeah, but that's something I didn't really fully appreciate the first time watching. Is like, and I got more this time. And granted, I wish they showed it more visually as opposed to just saying it so much. But it's like trying to remember a dream and how hard that is to do. Like, I'm sure people listening have tried at some point. Like, it's really, really fucking hard. And I wish there was some sort of visual, because it's animated, you can do stuff like that. There's some visual indication or just some effect that showed that like happening, as opposed to just them saying, I remember, and then I don't. I think it's one thing that could have elevated the film. But yeah, that's something on the second watch that I definitely like understood more of. Like, yeah, it's really hard to remember a dream.
Yeah, and I think they played that out well in at the climax. I don't know, in the near the end of the movie when they're both like forgetting each other's name, and then Taki didn't even write his name because he's a dumbass. And yeah, I thought that they played with that really well, where it's like literally just trying to remember a dream, and you see like a glint of something and like it's the thread, the woven time braid, and it it still ties them together even though they've lost the memories. I like that. I like that, what you mentioned, the logic that, you forget a dream. It's like trying to remember a dream. Yeah.
Because I was thinking this watch, I'm like, did they never we were doing homework and had to write the year, like.
Yeah.
But.
Right. You didn't see a billboard with today's date.
But that's something that could be obscured because it's a dream, and none of them would think to talk about it. Maybe because they're like, oh, we're just trying to manage the life, you know.
Also, you can explain that away too, because you don't focus on details like that in a dream.
Yeah.
You know, like when Mitsuha in Taki's body keeps going to a cafe. You remember the cafe. You remember what you ate. You don't remember like what the newspaper said the date.
Yeah, I really like that. How he's like, stop eating so much, stop wasting my money, and she's like, stop working so much. She's like, I'm working so much because you're spending all my money. Like, all that stuff was really great. And her like going on dates with the girl at work that he likes, and she actually all that stuff. She likes her, and all that stuff was really fun. Yeah, and I think this movie like does a lot. It benefits from a rewatch because I was able to just kind of relax and just enjoy it. Whereas the first time, like, but what about this and do this? And I don't know if you were actually mad, but I was also mad that Taki didn't write his name. It's like, bro, come on. But on rewatch, I'm like, it's. I
wasn't
it's
actually
sweet.
Mad, but it's like light. It's like lightly dumb. Like, come on. Dude.
Yeah. And then I was like,
say I love you, love Taki.
Well, and then the end, I was like, if they end this movie without them meeting up, I'm going to fucking lose it. And thankfully they do, but they really tease you.
Yeah, no, they do like a fake out like 3 times in a row. It's like, oh, come on, yeah. And then at the very end, they're about to do another fake out. I'm like, no, I've had enough of this. They're not gonna walk past each other again. You're just stalling for time at this point.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, I really love this movie. One other thing I wanted to quickly mention, I wonder how they did it in the dub. Is the first time that Mitsuha's in Taki's body and she uses the female pronoun of I, and his friends are like, "What are you saying?" I wonder how they did that in the dub.
I bet you that scene just doesn't translate.
I bet they had to do something else to.
Yeah, they filled some other feminine thing in there, but
yeah,
because it would work in something like Spanish, where there's gendered pronouns and everything. But yeah, I don't know. And then I love where it ended, which we touched on. I like they actually finally break the tension and talk to each other, and it kind of fades to the sky. I do wish though that they hadn't cut away when Mitsuha was about to have her confrontation with her father.
Yeah,
I don't know. I would have liked to have some sort of cathartic moment with the two of them, although they don't really develop the father too much.
Yeah, they don't really have time to, and that's one part of the movie that was a little bit undercooked. It would be nice to have that moment. But I think,
it's not a short movie, so I can see where some things maybe hit the cutting room floor.
And I much prefer the scenes with the grandma, and it's like, just give me more of those, man. She's the entire scene where they're walking up the mountain to the shrine. I think is just gorgeous. So yeah, she was awesome. And because sorry, I'm just remembering because her dad figures out that Taki's in her body.
He figures out something is amiss
and I'm like, okay, so was he dreaming with her mom? Because the grandma's like, oh, I dreamed and your mom dreamed, and a couple more lines to resolve that would have been nice, but it is what it is. I don't have too much more to say about this movie. I really love it. I loved it even more on the second watch. I would definitely recommend it, but maybe not you, Perk.
No, I would also recommend it. I would especially recommend it if you haven't seen one of the movies that I would recommend.
Well, let's get into that. What would you recommend based on this movie?
So, the first half of this movie is Freaky Friday, and I will, of course, recommend the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan version. I'm sure there's an older version, but that version slaps.
It really does. I haven't watched it in so long.
And then the second movie, which you may not have seen, the second half of the movie is it's The Lake House.
I have not seen that film, no.
It's a romantic drama thriller starring Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves.
Oh.
And it's like super critically panned, and I love it.
So really, you just have a vendetta against the people that didn't like The Lake House. That's what I'm hearing.
Something like that. No, I just... Because as soon as the twist happens, I'm like, oh, it's The Lake House. So the plot of The Lake House is Sandra Bullock moves in. I think she's a writer, and she rents like a lake house for the summer to write her book. Um, and she through I forget what sets it into motion, but she like opens the mailbox, and there's a letter from the guy who built the house, Keanu Reeves, and she responds to the letter, and she'll just come back out one morning, and there's a letter in the box, and they're corresponding, and they fall in love over pen pals, and they're like, let's meet up, and so they go to meet up, and he no shows and she no shows, and it's because they're sending messages to each other from 2 years apart. And this is the kicker. I'm going to spoil this 2006 movie. Sorry to all the listeners. If you really want to watch The Lake House, which I repeat, nobody likes this movie, but I love it. It turns out at like early on in the movie, Sandra Bullock witnesses a car accident and a man is killed, and she tries to save him, but she can't. The man is Keanu Reeves, who dies going to meet her at their planned date. But she doesn't know about that yet because she hasn't gotten to the lake house. And so, like, frantically at the end of the movie, Sandra Bullock sends another letter like, if you love me, do not go to meet me at the cafe or whatever. Come to the lake house at this date at this time. And they avoid his death, and he comes to the lake house and happily ever after. So do you see where I'm coming from? Where I'm like, sure. I've seen this story before, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, this is like a better rendition of the story, but the fact that I've seen it before kind of took a little off the top for me.
No, for sure. And I was thinking about that recently, of like, because I feel like we watched something on the podcast recently, or maybe it was a bonus review, where I had that same thing where it's like, this is good, but I've seen it before, so it's not hitting as hard. And it's amazing how much that affects things. And it sucks. Like, but I think we just like need uniqueness, and we need new stuff to keep us. Maybe it's because we're in this age of the golden age of media where we can just watch anything whenever we want. Like, it's just got to be fresh, right.
But your name is fresh enough. It's just the story so closely follows a couple of movies that are,
right,
have a surprising amount of real estate in my mind.
Right.
That I was just kind of always reminded of them.
Do Keanu and Sandra have chemistry?
I mean, they were also the leads in Speed.
You're not wrong. I still got to watch Speed. I need to watch that movie.
Speed. they must have had something, because I think Speed came out, or no,
that was the 80s.
Speed came out first.
Maybe 90s.
Yeah, so this is a reunion of sorts.
There you go.
But yeah, they probably didn't have very good. I mean, as I said, this is not.
Don't get me wrong. I love Keanu.
Successful movie.
We all love Keanu. Is he the best actor? No, but we love him all the same.
No, he's kind of terrible, but he's good at what he does.
He's lovable, He's great.
Yeah, and he plays John Wick really well, where he has like 4 lines of dialogue.
The perfect role. I would recommend a movie called Ride Your Wave that I watched during the podcast. I remember talking about the podcast probably a year ago. This is another anime movie that came out in 2022. Yeah. And if you want another kind of romantic drama with a twist, which is this surfer, I think she's a surfer, is dating this firefighter, and he dies. But then things happen where they're trying to stay together after the fact. And it's fun, but also very sad, and it's a good time. I would recommend watching Ride Your Wave if you want like a nice summer kind of flick about a romance like that. So I think it's on HBO Max, so you can check that out if you want. But yeah, that is our review of Your Name. Before we reveal our watching next week, I got to give some bonus reviews because Perk is slacking once again.
Yeah, I'm off the ball, and I'm probably not going to have any next week either. I'll work on it.
He's too busy traveling the globe, partying it up like crazy.
Jet setting, as they say.
So I'll stay on the anime train. The first thing I watched this week was an anime called Run with the Wind. I was listening to an anime podcast, and someone recommended this, and I was like, you know what? I'll check it out. This is a sports anime about a college track and field team. And
there's just an anime for everything, isn't there?
There really is, Perk. And the premise is kind of hard to explain, but I'll do my best here. Basically, you got a freshman coming in he's fast, Perk. He can move. And he gets recruited to come live at this off-campus house because he has no money, and they're like, you can live here. And it turns out that the kind of leader of the house, one of the students, this freshman was the 10th person. They're trying to get 10 people, and he's like, all right, now we have 10 people. We're gonna form a track and field team. And everyone's like, what? Because everyone else who lived there before didn't know about this. And he's like, yeah, look, and it's like on fine print in like the lease, like you join the track and field team and you live in this house. And so it's a bunch of like 8 amateurs and 2 runners, and the goal is to run. And I'm sure this must be a real race. It's called the Hakone Aikiden, which is a relay race in Japan that is 10 people. Each one runs like a half marathon. And it's a college race. And like, we're going to work up and we're going to run this. So, I mean, for me, it was someone who ran in high school. I definitely was able to connect to it a bit more, and also gave me some trauma memories of how painful running is and how much races suck. But you know, it's a good show, man. I think it was a little bit overhyped for me, for the person talking about it who was recommending it. I think like the animation is fine. Like, it is very serviceable. There is nothing, you know, enticing about it. There's no really X factor. Like, it's animated to deliver the story. It doesn't elevate too much. I think the story itself is solid. You got 10 dudes kind of each going their little character arcs and developing, and it's a good group of people. They're very lovable. You know, it's not the best sports anime I've seen. You know, it's no Haikyuu, but you know, it's solid. So I think if you especially if you ran in the past competitively, and you want like a pretty good sports anime with some nice characters, check out Run with the Wind. It's a good time, you know. And then the other movie, the movie I watched, which I was very much looking forward to, was Oldboy. 20-year anniversary. They brought it back. AMC brought it back into theaters. Like, it's a new remastered version, apparently. And Perk and I wanted to watch it on the podcast at some point, but you just can't watch it. Like, you can't rent it. You can't stream it. So I'm like, you know what? It's in theaters. This is my chance to go check it out. And it was really interesting. So I, went in there, and the movie starts with a message from the director, and he's like, hey, I imagine a lot of people haven't seen this movie before. There's a lot of young people coming in, and he's like, I'll give you some advice. This movie is very violent. There's a lot of nudity, and if you like octopi, you probably shouldn't watch this movie. And then he also said, it's okay to laugh. There are some ironic and funny scenes. Like, it's okay to laugh if you feel like it. Which honestly was a great primer, because I knew it was going to be like intense, but it was nice to hear the director be like, hey, like, you'll be okay, but also like be aware of this stuff. Perk, this is an incredible movie. The movie was amazing. And I think the misconception, at least for me going in, was I thought this was like, people like Oldboy because it's an action movie. It's got the hallway scene, it's like a John Wick of the past or whatever. To me, that is not even close to the most impressive thing about this movie. It's not even an action movie. Like, it's not. It's a revenge movie, and it's about these two characters that are put against each other. And I think this movie has my favorite villain I've ever seen in a film. Like, this is like, people always say like Joker from The Dark Knight, best villain. I mean, I think this villain tops Joker. Easy. Absolutely incredible. I think the characterization for the main character and the villain are so well done, and you this movie is batshit crazy of what happens and all that, but like, I bought that the characters did every single thing they were doing. Like, I completely believe them and believe they would do the things they did. I kind of skipped over what the premise is. For those who don't know, the premise is there's a dude in Korea, just kind of a random guy, gets kidnapped one day, and he's in prison for 15 years at like some random place. It's not like an actual prison. It's like somebody kidnapped him, put him in this like hotel room essentially, and locked him up for 15 years. And then they let him out, and he's like, figure out why you were in prison. Like, figure out who did this and why they did it. And he got 5 days to figure it out. And yeah, and this dude, the main character, wants revenge because he's like, whoever did this to me, like, they needed to pay. And then the person who did it to him, it's like, okay, he wanted revenge on him for some reason, but why did he? And man, dude, this movie is just, it's so fucking good. And I know they made an American version with Josh Brolin, and
with Josh Brolin. Yeah,
it's just why? Like,
because it's a good story and it worked overseas, but they think Americans are afraid of subtitles, which
I know
they are.
It's so sad, and I hope this limited showing does well. I haven't looked at the numbers, but this movie hasn't skipped a beat, man. Like a tiny bit of the CGI looks a little bit off, you know, like because obviously it was 20 years ago, but it still looks pretty fucking good for the time. There's not a lot of CGI, but that's the only thing I can nitpick. This movie completely holds up. It's fucked up for sure, but like I said, all the characters are super believable, and it makes sense that they do the things they do. So if you have the ability to watch this movie, I cannot recommend it enough. You gotta watch Oldboy. It is so well done. And Perk, it's got an ambiguous ending, which I know you'll love.
Oh, I do. I'm gonna try to see it. It looks like it's in theaters still for this coming week.
Oh, okay.
So I will definitely try and get out there because, yeah, you're right. I think like there's no way to find it, nowhere to stream it. So.
I'm sure you could torrent it, but we don't promote that.
No, we only do the legals here.
Mm-hmm. The other kind of nice thing, it wasn't amazing, but after the film, there was essentially a directors on directors of Nicholas Winding Refn, who's the director of Drive, interviewing the director of Oldboy, which I should grab his name because
probably there's some inspiration taken there.
100%. Park Chan-wook. He doesn't ask like the most amazing questions, like they're fine. Sure. But it was nice to hearing some kind of behind the scenes on the movie and how he kind of approaches film. Apparently, and he said that he does like probably some of the most detailed storyboards of any director working. Like he just storyboards the entire movie and follows it like 90%. And yeah, like it's so obvious that Nicholas Winding Refn was inspired by this movie. And I think like Oldboy is what I wanted Drive to be. Like Drive, I think was a bit too hyper violent for me. We watched on the podcast. You can go back and listen to our episode on it.
Yeah.
It didn't fully work for me. Oldboy is just the superior version of that movie. So, yeah, respect to Nicholas, but I think, you know, he didn't quite capture what made this movie special. And I think it is the characters. Like, end of the day, yeah, there's amazing action. It's a beautiful movie. Like the art direction is insane. But at the end of the day, it is the dynamic between these characters, and they are just so well fleshed out. So yeah, you gotta see it, people. You gotta see Oldboy.
And make sure to stay tuned to the pod for our South Korean thread we do, where I'm probably gonna suggest another Park Chan-wook movie.
Oh yeah, we should definitely watch more of his stuff. Yeah,
we'll see. He had one come out last year that I really wanted to see, didn't get around to.
What is interesting, and I don't fully understand this, and I'll just briefly talk about it because if people are gonna see it. So apparently, Oldboy is not necessarily a sequel, but like kind of a sequel to another movie he did called let me look it up. I think it's called Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance or something like that.
Sounds appropriate.
There we go. That's what I want. Dun, dun, dun. Was Decision to Leave the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that or seeing an ad for it. Yeah, okay. So yeah, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance was 2002 and Oldboy 2003. And he mentioned Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance in the interview after the movie and how that was kind of like a test run, or because it's way more minimalist. But then there was another movie that came out 2 years later called Lady Vengeance, or Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. So I don't think they're like a trilogy, but it's like a thematic trilogy maybe. But this dude just likes making movies about revenge. I'm not sure why.
Fair enough.
So yeah, there's that if you want to do a triple feature. But yeah, I'm so happy I made it out to this movie. I'll admit, like when I was sitting in that scene, he's explaining it's going to be like violent and a lot of sexual stuff that may be kind of fucked. I'm like, I don't know, I might regret this, but I definitely like I had to look through my eyes a couple times on some of the torture scenes. But besides that, yeah, it's incredible. So go see Oldboy, please. But yeah, that is our show for this week. Next week, I'm very excited for this, Perk. We're going to watch Ghost in the Shell, the original, not the ScarJo version. Thank God. We're doing Ghost in the Shell. Our connection is an animator named Hideki Hamasu, who was an animator in both films. He's got like 75 credits. This dude's been working. So I'm excited to see, just the animation to Ghost Shell in general. I've seen some clips that are just amazing, but that is streaming on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Freevee. So you got some options there. Ghost in the Shell next week. But until then, thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye-bye.